Thank you, Adrian. Yes, nice and warm here in the studio in Cardiff. Alan Cairns, your former coalition partners there, do you feel sorry for the Lib Dems?
Well, I think that they were subject to the scrutiny that the main political parties have always been subject to, and therefore they weren't a protest party anymore, so they could promise anything whilst they were in opposition. But of course, when they became part of a coalition, they had to account for the decisions that they were part of. So they could promise no tuition fees in opposition, but when it comes to it, they realised the harsh financial reality and therefore had to vote for it. So I think that was the one reason for their failure. And the other reason is, of course, the Lib Dems are made up of people who very often left many of the other political parties. You had Vince Cable on the left, you had the leadership on the right, and everyone else in between. So there was no coherent message. And I think probably those 2 points did for them at the general election.
Nathan Gill, are there lessons for UKIP here?
Not at all, because the Lib Dems are all things to all men, and UKIP were very, very clear, and always have been, where we're coming from, where we're going. We don't flip-flop around, and we don't promise everything just to try and get voted for. I mean, a lot of things that Nigel Farage says, he gets absolutely slated for, and then 2 or 3 years down the line, he gets proven to be right. So I don't think so. And the reality is, what relevance do the Lib Dems have now in Wales with the Corbyn effect, you know, with the polarisation between the Conservatives on one hand and Labour on the other? I think we're going to see a lot of parties getting squeezed.
You suggested the Corbyn effect there. Cesi Dugdale, if Labour moves steadily to the left, is there more space maybe for the Lib Dems to come back?
I tell you what's great to see in Kirsty Williams is another strong female leader right at the forefront of politics. We've got 3 of those in Scotland, where we've got 3-party in Scotland led by women. I'm not so sure that there's a space for the Liberal Democrats anymore. I think that they've gone down in people's estimation so substantially because of the promises that they've broken. Take tuition fees, for example. I think people are kind of used to politicians saying one thing and doing another, but on something that they were so fundamentally about, they defined themselves against, and then to go a complete volte-face in the other direction. I think people just look at Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrats and just don't see anything worth voting for.
Nathan, looking at the next election, surely surpassing the Lib Dems in terms of number of AMs has to be UKIP's ambition?
Not at all. You know, it's not our ambition because we know we're going to do it. We're hoping to come, you know, on a par with Plaid Cymru, and of course Plaid Cymru are in trouble because they've pitched their entire ethos on being left of Labour, and all of a sudden, through Jeremy Corbyn, Labour are going to out-left Plaid Cymru. Well, I think a lot of voters from Plaid Cymru and the Green Party are going to start sliding back to Labour.
I'm sure we'll cover Labour later in the programme. But Alan Cairns, on that next election, looking around, the Labour not in great shape, some would say the Lib Dems not either. This has to be a good election for the Conservatives, doesn't it?
Well, we don't take anything for granted, but of course we would like to point to the stability to the economy. We're the fastest growing economy in the G7. Wales is the fastest growing part of the UK. So when we put those things together, yes, we've got a credible story to tell, but we're only part of the way there. There's an awful long way to go in order to raise living standards as we want. Wales is still not as wealthy as it is. It's one of the poorest parts of the UK. That's what we inherited from Labour. When Labour came into power in '97, it wasn't the poorest part of the UK. So we've started turning things around. We're working exceptionally hard. City deal for Cardiff, for example, in order to grow prosperity. We have the electrification of the main line. I met Edwina Hart today to talk about the upgrades of the railway lines in North Wales. So we've got lots of ambitious plans. And of course, we don't take anything for granted. We've got to earn every vote that's out there.
We'll have to hold it there for a second. Of course, the Lib Dems aren't the only party looking for a new direction under a new leader. But will Labour's new leader, Jeremy Corbyn, help them next May? Carwyn Jones is doing his best to sound positive. Alan Cairns, I'll bring you in at this point. There is an issue here, isn't there, that Labour did do better in Wales than in Scotland?
Well, they didn't do as well as they'd planned and well as they'd hoped, and they lost seats. But I think it's important to understand the differences of what's happening in Wales compared to the rest of the UK, and particularly compared with England. I mean, you mentioned some of the public services and education that Labour have apparently done well, but the reality is that we are the lowest in the PISA international ranking tables of the United Kingdom here in Wales. We all know that health waiting lists are a lot longer here in Wales, and these are the issues that are going to be difficult for Labour. Labour, because they have got to absolutely account for these really important areas of public services. They've promised so much in the past and they've delivered absolutely so little, to the cost of my family and your family and everyone else's family.
Nathan Gill, but isn't the wider point here is that, you know, we always compare Wales with other parts of the UK, other parts of Europe, but we are a different nation in terms of demographic, in terms of sickness rates and so on.
Well, we are, absolutely. I mean, we have a smaller population than Scotland. We have a union with England for 800 years. Scotland only 200, 300 years, whatever it is. So the reality is you cannot really compare. But I think, as Alan just pointed out, all that I'm bothered about is the health service and the education for my children, and the fact that my children have a job that will keep them in Wales once they leave school, hopefully with good grades. And the reality is, regardless of what you're saying, I'm afraid Labour is not delivering for the people of Wales.
Kezia, briefly.
Well, Carwyn Jones today, £150 million project for innovation, bringing new jobs connected to science and technology.
Let Kezia finish the point.
Well, it's good we don't do that in Scotland. That's great that you get to have your say. £150 million worth of money invested today in innovation, skills and technology jobs here in Wales. That's a government that's excited about the future.
We need to be measuring outcomes about the education standards that our schools and universities are throwing out, about the waiting times for operations. Those are the outcomes. It's the outcomes that are coming out, not about how much money is been pumped in time and time again. For so many years, we've always measured success by how much money we're spending rather than the value we're getting out of that.
You mentioned the PISA stats. That's about the highest levels of excellence within the education system. That's very much something that's a Tory that you would measure. Now, I'm talking about the attainment gap, the gap between the richest kids and the poorest kids.
Well, this is
and on that measure, the Welsh Government are doing a tremendous amount to give kids from poorer backgrounds a much better start in life.
This was an ambition of the Welsh Labour Government to raise the PISA standards. They failed in their own measure, so it's not a measure I've put on them.
Kids.
Yeah, briefly, can I bring Nathan Gill on this?
Yeah, I mean, basically, as you can see, you know, we're all arguing the toss, basically. The reality is, what is going to happen for my children? Are they going to have a better standard of education? And under 15 years of a Labour-run administration here in Wales, it has consistently decreased. Our NHS has consistently decreased, and we are one of the poorest regions within the United Kingdom. You cannot try and pretend that that is a good record, because it's a horrendous record, and there will be a change next year, and we are very much looking forward to that.
Well, I think you've given us a flavour of what we can expect in that election in May. Time now, though, to rejoin Adrian at the Lib Dem conference back in Bournemouth.
Wrong studio, not that I'm jealous, Owain.
Thank you, Adrian. Yes. Nathan Gill, yes, we've got a Labour conference. We've got a new UKIP conference as well on the horizon. Do you feel that maybe there's a bit more pressure, a bit more expectation on UKIP now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did extremely well in the general election. Of course, we only got the one MP, but we got 4 million votes, just about. And the way that the polls are showing, and the way that it's been consistently shown, we are going to get representation in the Welsh Assembly. We've got to show that we're a grown-up party, that we have professional people who can actually, you know, come over and not just be a protest, not just be against things, but show the Welsh public what we actually are for, and that's what we have to do.
Kezia, what can we expect, do you think, in Brighton for Labour?
I think it's going to be a hugely exciting conference coming up. I'm going down on Friday. The first thing we face on Saturday is the Women's Conference. There'll be a lot of heated debate there, I'd imagine, about the way forward. But, you know, the Labour Party's growing, 600,000 people across the whole of the UK. If anything, we'll have a full house, that's for sure.
We've heard from some Welsh MPs this idea that Corbyn is some sort of experiment, that we'll try Corbyn. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll look maybe to replace him. Do we have the same feeling in the Scottish Party?
Well, some people say that about me as well. So Corbyn has a mandate of 60% of the party. I had 72%. When you place the trust in your party members to pick a leader and they answer definitively, then you have to just respect that and make the very best of it. You heard Carwyn say that today. The Labour Party is 100% behind Jeremy Corbyn and making that leadership work.
So not an experiment for you?
Absolutely not, no. I think this is fundamentally going to change the way the Labour Party does its politics, but crucially also the United Kingdom, the way that we do our business, the type of language that we use. You've already seen that in Prime Minister's questions just last week.
And Alan Cairns, for your conference, is there a risk that maybe some of your right-wing elements in your party start to feel empowered and may well start to press that European button again?
Well, we're having a referendum. I mean, so that's what the issue will come down to. So the people of Wales and the United Kingdom will have their say. So I don't see that necessarily as an issue. I mean, there's some shadow boxing going on at the moment, but that's inevitable. And they're of all party groups, because there are serious divisions within the Labour Party, whereby Jeremy Corbyn suggested that he might want to vote to leave Europe, but then, of course, his MPs thought the other way. But I think on Jeremy Corbyn, it's very important for people to realise that he is a serious threat to our nation's security because of the way he votes and the way he thinks of our armed forces and anti-terror legislation, but also to our economic and financial security. Your mortgage, my mortgage is dependent on it.
Unfortunately, time has beaten us. That's